Okay, alt economy 101. Oh man, this one is a difficult video to make because there's so much involved with how you use your alts that I'm not even sure I'll be able to cover everything in one video uh, successfully, but I will do my best. So when to alt in this game is kind of crucial because of the fact that alts really help dictate, who wins and who loses the fights. Um, and what you're trying to do with alt economy is use as few alts as possible in order to maintain control over the objective. You maintain control over the objective by winning the fights. You win the fights by winning that numbers game I've talked about many times, right? The numbers game would be essentially like if this is my team, right? If I use an alt and we manage to take out like their main support, that's pretty good. There's a decent chance that we basically just win that fight. But if we use a single alt and we take out, uh, you know, two people, both their supports, the fight is over, right? There's no way for them to sustain through. The fight is won. We don't need to use any more alts on top of that. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to use your alts in a way to win the fights by taking out either enough people, like if there's two supports down, the fight's pretty much over, or there might even be a support still up. And let's say you take out, a tank, a DPS, and one support, right? And let's say it's a 6v3. It's a 6v3, fight's over. You guys win the fight. There's nothing they can do to retake that point. You don't want to use any more ultimates, right? It doesn't matter if you're playing, if you're playing a DPS, like say you're playing Star-Lord, right? And we used let's say we used three alts to win the fight. We used, my alts, Groot alt, and Venom alt, and we use them in conjunction together. We won the fight. Now there's three people left on the enemy team, and then Star Lord decides to alt to kill the last three. Right? Great for the scoreboard on the stats. It's going to look amazing. You're going to have three extra final hits and three more KOs, and it's going to look like you did a lot. But ultimately, what you did is you wasted your alt because that fight was already over. You didn't need to use your alt in that instance in order to secure more kills because you didn't need them in order to secure the objective. So this is sort of like what alt economy kind of like is in these games is that you're trying to use your alts in ways to maintain control over that objective in the most efficient way possible. And what has been coined in Overwatch, I think by Emong, was alt domino, where one person starts to alt and then the next person alts. And then before you realize it, like you've used, like five ultimates to try and win one fight. And then by the time the enemy comes back and regroups, you only have one ultimate to their like, three or four, right? That's essentially what, trading ultimates is. So there can be times where you are alting in the game and it gets less value. Even if you win the fight, you might be guaranteed to lose the next one because of how you used your ultimates in a poor way. This is the reason why too, like certain ultimates do really well together. Like if you throw out a rocket alt and Venom uses his alt, Venom actually gets the damage boost from that, and that can actually play together. I think there's some other heroes as well, like Star Lord gets the damage boost as well from rocket alt. So there's certain alts that you can time together that will actually give you a better chance of winning the fight. But then there's ultimates like if you use Invisible Woman and Luna at the same time, those don't really go together super well. Like at the very least, Luna could be damage boosting inside of the Invisible Woman ult, but generally speaking, you don't want to double stack support alts. You want to stagger those out. So that's another thing you have to keep in mind of how to use your alts in the most efficient way possible. Um, and when you alt is sort of like you need to think of it like when you need to make a play, right? Like if you're on the offensive team, you want to sometimes use an alt offensively to try and get a pick in order to secure the objective faster. Because the sooner you get a pick, the sooner you can get the advantage and try and take the objective away. Or if you're fighting over the objective. But there's even times when using alts or trading alt for alt sometimes still benefits one party over the other. For instance, if you already have control over the objective, and both sides alt, the people in control over that objective ultimately end up better than than the team who didn't have control, right? Uh, trading alts can sometimes happens where, say you go in and you use like an offensive alt, but you blow both defensive alts on the enemy team. So if Starlord ults and you get both defensive alts out on the enemy team, the next time you push, it's basically a free push for whoever else has an offensive alt to go in. Uh, that can be an advantage in terms of the alt economy, in terms of you're trading one alt for two. But on defense, if you use a defensive alt and on defense and the enemy team uses a defensive alt and you're still in control over that objective, you came out on top. So even in times where you're trading alts one for one, it's not necessarily always a fair trade. It all depends on sort of like what's going on in that moment, who has control, and what's who you have on your team, who's you have on the enemy team. There's a lot of things to consider. There's different ways to think about using your alt. Like, should I use my alt to defend my team? Should I use them to keep myself alive? Should I use it to keep uh, my allies alive? Should I use it to counter an enemy alt? And should you save it for the next round if you feel that this round currently is not going well and you don't think that you can possibly win it? So maybe it's better to hold off on it and win the next fight in the earlier round than to try and hold on to this objective or try and win a round that is not in your favor. These are all the questions you sort of need to ask yourself. And one thing too that you also want to try and do, and this is the fine balance of alt management, is that in this game, using your abilities, you kind of want to use them off of cooldown in order to try and maximize their value output, but you also want to use them as efficiently as possible. Uh, and with ultimates, it's the same thing. It's the reason why, like, if you've seen some of my other videos on like supports or like playing Rocket, uh, I charge my alt really fast. And the moment I get my alt, I want to pop it immediately, right? The sooner I can use my alt in order to secure a team fight win and in order to secure an objective, I'm going to do it because the faster I can use it, the faster I can start charging another one up. So a lot of times people tend to hold their alts for too long, and you can end up getting, two or three alts in the amount of time that it would have taken you to use just one. You don't want to hold your alt, forever waiting for the perfect moment. You want to use them as frequently as possible, but also as efficiently as possible. And that goes back into the whole alt economy thing. Like, do I need to use this alt or not? Right. You don't have to use it every fight. But if you think it can give you that advantage to win that numbers game, you should definitely use it if you need to use it to secure an objective. Uh, but this is a fine balance that you're going to have to figure out as you go, is because, ultimates are really obviously powerful in this game and they either deserve the respect and space, or, they need to be used offensively to try and make plays more often because of the fact that that's, you need to. Um, but this is difficult and you can only get better. You can only it's only something you're sort of going to learn in time. It's very complicated to just say like, oh, should I use my alt at this time or when should I use it? You should think of like how your alt is going to be countered. For Cloak and Dagger, for instance, we all know that Magneto is going to, dunk on her with his alt. So you need to be mindful of that when playing Cloak and Dagger, of just like, okay, if they have an enemy Magneto, I need to be able to be in a position to where I can hide into a corridor the moment after I ult. I need to play around that idea, or I need to fade up in the air and then try and ult in the air and make it a little bit harder to hit. Uh, or if you're playing like a DPS, you need to think of like, okay, who can counter my ult, right? So for instance, on this map here, Star Lord has one thing that can stop and shut down his ult, basically, which is the Invisible Woman. So he can either use his ult to force Invisible Woman to use her ult so she doesn't have it anymore, or he can try and attack her and we can try and focus her down to get her to force it early, uh, and then possibly allow him to have a free ult afterwards. That's sort of the thinking ahead strategy of just like, okay, what can stop my ult from being effective? Same for like Loki totems and stuff like that too. Like if I'm playing DPS and I know that the Loki still has totems up, I need to attack the Loki first in order to get the totems to be used. And then once the totems are used, then I can use my ult in an offensive way, or at least have the greater chance of of having it be successful. Um, but yeah, there's so many different factors here of just like when do I alt, is it worth it? Like, sometimes you just alt just to hold space or maintain control of the objective for longer. I do it with Captain America all the time. you can alt on the point, like even if you're just by yourself, you can alt and jump around on like a domination map to maintain control over that point for longer and get the objective timer up. Or you can alt on the convoy and just stall and wait for your team to come back in time to get another fight in. Uh, there's lots of different ways you can use your ultimates in order to maintain or fight for control over the objectives. And enough of me talking. I will provide actual examples now. Here is just there are so many different ways that you can use your ultimates, that is what makes this game really fun, is that it's not as black and white as just saying, oh, here's what you do, right? um so here's me playing Cloak and Dagger right now. The game has just started, and this first round was a good round because I can bring up a couple of different good examples of ults. uh Both teams are basically trying to fight and get picks in the neutral game, uh, and charge their ults as fast as possible. Once again, you can see here, like once I start getting attacked by a flanker, I just go on the offensive. My team should have regrouped here because we were down. But usually when you're playing support, because of the fact that as support, your job is to heal, not do damage, it's easier to heal consistently than it is to do damage. So generally speaking, most of the time, supports will charge their ults faster than DPS or tanks will. So a lot of times what you want to do is, if you are a support and you happen to notice you're charging your ult super quickly, if you can use it first before anyone else has a chance to even respond, like you definitely should. Uh, I do it all the time, whether it be Cloak and Dagger or Rocket. Like I am charging my ult as fast as possible, and the moment I get it, I'm just going to snap it and go. If we can secure that fight before they even have a chance to respond with an ult of their own, because then I know that they don't have any ults like to counter mine. Really don't like the fact that we were screwing with a fighty, but so here I'm getting close to my ult, but we end up getting taken out by the flanker. And, so right now we want to make sure that we're keeping track of the enemy team ults and my ults. And I know that I'm close to my ult, but I also know that because of the fact that we were sort of uh, on the defensive, that the enemy team has more ults than we do in this moment in time. Um, they have the ult advantage here. Like you can see how our ults are still charging and they are almost too full on all of them, and we are massively behind in comparison, right? So they have the advantage, but still, because of the fact that they have control over the point, I want to use an ult in order to try and make a play. Here, my team, we just had struggled to like, and I know that Spider-Man had flanked earlier, and I know that he's just going to do it again. So in predictable fashion, I turn around and just pay attention to him because generally speaking, if it works once, players are going to try it again. So they'll just keep doing it until it stops working. So right there, I wanted to keep an eye out, make it so cut that out. So here, because they have control over the objective, I am ulting in order to try and make a play and force something to happen, right? Um, so here, in this situation, we force Invis Woman ult and we use Groot ult. But in terms of ult economy, they're doing better than we are because of the fact that we use 2 ults for 1. So if we don't get kills in this instance, we are at an extreme disadvantage. But Groot ult in returns, now it's 2 for 2. But you can see how, like, even though it's 2 for 2, this percentage up there for them is still going up, right? So technically, at this moment in time, they're doing better than we are. But we did manage to get a pick. I am trying to just help keep my team alive. But you see how, like, right there, once again, Star-Lord is ulting, so I'm just pocketing him. Star-Lord, because of the fact that he ulted after Groot ulted, Invisible Woman ult was down, which means that his ult is free for everybody. This is where sometimes, even though you break even in terms of like the ult usage, you can come out on top because the fact that like Groot's gonna say like, "Hey, I'm gonna ult, I'm gonna force Invis Woman ult," and then Star Lord is gonna be like, "Okay, I'm gonna wait, I'm gonna hold my ult for 6 seconds until that's all done, and then when it's done, then I'm going to ult in order to clean up the fight easier." This is where timing your ultimates is so crucial because if he would have done it at the same time as Groot ulted, it wouldn't have done anything. And now in terms of alt usage, we basically broke even. Like both teams used alts, but we managed to take back the objective, which puts us at a big advantage here because now it's a fair fight. But we have control over the objective, and at this point, someone DC'd, which I didn't see at the time, but I was still playing as if he was there. But this is a really good example of something I wanted to point out, which is that like a lot of times in this game, because its optimization is so poor and it crashes so frequently, even on the best PCs, uh, you can you should always be playing around the idea that they are coming back, right? And in this instance, because of the fact that we already have control over the point, but they got it to 99, which means they have a lot of time, right? But what I would do if I was them is I would come out to try and charge my ult with my team and try and see what we can do and force my team to want to use their ults to attack our team and then just not ult ourselves, right? In doing so, it's what you would call a dry push. A dry push is attacking the enemy team and get them to use ultimates, so that way they don't have them for the next fight. And because of the fact that ultimately the enemy team only needs to win one fight. So if they come out and they do a dry push and we use, let's say, two or three ultimates in order to try and keep control over the objective, but then the enemy team comes back with, five or six, they would have the advantage. So what I would have been telling my team is like, just go in there and dry push. Nobody use any ultimates, and just we'll keep doing that until until the very last second when hopefully the person comes back. You see here, Rocket is about to get his ult, and he decides to make a play, right? But he still has a lot of time left. But because he decides to make a play, now our Groot ults and kills everyone. And now they're down a rocket ult. Right? Now their person is coming back into the game. He just came back in and he still has his ult. Now imagine if Rocket didn't use his ult, right? They would have had at least 5 ults, and we would have been down a Groot ult, which would have been absolutely huge, right? Because Groot ult is powerful. But here's me noticing that, like, hey, I know that they only have one defensive ult, so I am telling my Star Lord, hey, what I'm gonna do is I am going to ult first to try and force Invis Woman ult, and after she ults, then Star Lord, you can ult and clean everybody up, and I'll pocket you, right? Because of the fact that I know they have nothing else to counter against that, and this is a really open map, and they have to be on the point with it being that close to the end, right? And right now, all I'm trying to do, now that I see that wall go up, I ult in onto their backline, and I force the Invis Woman ult early. Try to help my teammates who are doing what they can. And you see how Star-Lord waited until after the Invis Woman ran out, and then he decided to ult? This was us communicating and coming up with a strategy in-game of our ult usage and economy. So now, he gets basically free cleanup. There's no guarantee that if they had the rocket ult, they might have been able to hold the point, but it's still possible, right? Like, uh, that's what I mean by sort of like having this sort of like alt economy and trying to maximize the amount of value you can get, and if you can win the objective, using as little as possible, and maintaining those alts because by using the alts when they were in a 5v6 at a disadvantage, I understand they were trying to make a play, but they also still had time to wait in case possibly Spider-Man came back. Because there's there was a chance that they could have used Spider-Man and Rocket Alt at the same time. Um, so yeah, that was a good example of, when you could dry push in and when you could, stagger your ultimates with the help of your DPS. Because my Cloak and Dagger ult was not meant to get any kills. It wasn't actually, I knew that I wasn't going to kill anything, but I did know that I could force an ult early, it, and not use my ult defensively, specifically to try and keep my team alive. I could use it in a way where I could set my teammate up for success. So whether or not you want to use that ult in a defensive way or an offensive way is going to change entirely depending on who's on your team and what ults are available and if you have control over the objective or not. That is going to be something that you kind of have to figure out as you go. Um, so here's a game I'm playing Cap. I'm gonna fast forward till we get till we get a few more ults on screen here. So our team got pushed pretty bad early on. I ended up dying, overstaying my welcome. And you can see here how the enemy team has a huge ult advantage. And this happened because of the fact that originally our Starlord died first and early. And when you die early like that and your team is on the defensive, this is how momentum in games can kind of get out of control. Is that because of the fact that the enemy team got the kill, they were able to charge their ults faster, which means that this puts them into a better position than we are, which is why games snowball out of control because you can tell they already have five, almost six alts, and we only have two, and not even close really to anymore. Like, this is the reason why games snowball out of control so quickly. Um, and why it's difficult to regain it, but why you shouldn't give up because it's just about playing smart and regaining that momentum and understanding when to be aggressive and when not to. So here I am waiting until the last possible second in order for my team to come back from spawn. Um, so here I am now just stalling on the point, right? I'm doing my thing as Cap, which is I'm just staying alive and I'm just trying to buy time for my team to show up. So now we get a pick, luckily early on the rocket, and now they're using two alts to try and get the numbers advantage. Looks like we traded one for one to try and get the numbers advantage, so that way they could push the cart in the rest of the way. But they did use two of their alts, and so far we haven't used any of ours, which is pretty good because of the fact that we regained control of the payload. Now, because of the fact that like we have control over this objective and there's no um but we're still technically down on the numbers advantage, I ult early to try and keep me and Mag alive as long as possible. And to try and maintain control over this objective in order for my team to come back. Because I know as Cap, I can buy a lot of time and hope that my team comes back in time. Mag uses his ult not in to counter a support ult, but to counter specifically the Punisher who's up in this location, because then it could give us an advantage if he gets that kill. Doesn't exactly work out, but it's fine. But now I bought enough time. Like, even though the ult didn't give us a numbers advantage, it gave me longer time of objective control. And on defense, that's good, right? Like I was telling you before, like because of the fact that if I use an ult, but I still maintain control over the objective, and the enemy team uses an ult, I'm technically winning in this exchange. So now Mag ults, and he doesn't use it to counter anything specifically. He tries to use it to make a play, but that's a huge waste on his part because of the fact that nobody died. He might have fat fingered it, I don't know, but he could have used it to counter Inviswoman ult. He could have used it to counter Star-Lord ult. But now that sort of gives us an advantage because now Star-Lord can ult for free. But they play really smart and have really good positioning, so not much happens with Star-Lord ult. But now you see here, once again, because of the fact that like we used Star-Lord ult and we didn't get anything out of it, they have three ults and we have none. This puts us at a huge disadvantage where our alt economy is really really bad. This is why you want to try and use alts to make plays, and perhaps if we were able uh to get that a pick or two off of the Star-Lord ult, we might have been able to continue to push and get, clean up the rest of the enemies that were left in order to charge more of our ults. Because just like you saw on offense on, the first point here in their first push, after they were able to push and kill just one of us, we all just sort of toppled like dominoes afterwards, and they charge their alts much faster. So if Starlord would have gotten a kill or two with his ult, we might have been able to play catch up with their ult economy right now, and possibly get closer to having ults to have a more fair exchange. But it didn't work out in our favor this time. So now we are mostly trying to charge our ults and stay alive and maintain control over this objective. But the enemy team is going to want to make a play because of the fact that they have the advantage. And now we bought enough time that Flo could ult on point. But once again, we're still at a disadvantage here. So what we're trying to get our numbers game up, and we're trying to get that advantage. But it's really difficult to do when you just don't have ults to counter. We used our one defensive ult to maintain control over the objective, and after that, because we didn't have any other ults, there's nothing we could do. We couldn't hold on to it for longer. Here's me doing my cap thing, which is just stalling, hoping to buy time. Should have thrown my shield down or something, maybe charge my ult a little bit up more, but so now, like, they still have really fantastic ult economy advantage right now over our team. Our team is just struggling to sort of catch up. So I ult here in order to try and pull focus and pull attention and keep the objective from moving, right? Like, you want to use ults in order to maintain control over the objective. You want to use it to, like I said, even if I use ults right here on defense, as long as the cart doesn't move, then it's worth it for me, right? Because my job is to keep that cart from moving forward. I was hoping I could pull enough resources and attention that my team could make a play, but it just didn't work out.
All right. Sorry, soldier.
But here now you can see the enemy team is using ults. You see the Punisher ult, and then you see our Magneto ult, so he goes to try and counter it. I'm going to follow and back him up. I already see that we are down one. My team is fighting, and what I want to do is, because of the fact that I can see that my team is losing, I go to the payload in order to stop it from moving. I'm trying to buy time for my team to respawn and come back so we can retake the objective. But now that they use a bunch of ults to try and retake the objective, it's a bit more fair. You can see that it's a bit more even. And this is where, like, tracking ults and stuff matters, is that, you want to try and keep track of, like, what can kill you, what can counter you. And, like, right now we know Jeff has his ult. So everyone should basically be playing a bit more spread out, or keep an ability ready in case Jeff tries to ult them. You want to try and keep track of these things, right? Like, what can counter my ult and how can I play around that? Or even necessarily, like, when can I use my ult in ways that it will benefit my team the most? Like, Rocket might not just want to throw his ult out there as soon as he gets it. Maybe in this instance, he wants to help Bucky charge up his ult, and so they can use them both at the same time. So that way they can secure the fight with just 2 ultimates versus, 2 or 3 or 4 ultimates staggered back to back. Because, like I said, all you need to do really is kill 2 people on the enemy team, and the fight's probably yours. I thought I could get that.
I never stay down.
Oh, they do not look happy.
There's still a chance to stop them. Better stop that vehicle.
I'm trying to get into position so that way I can stall the payload in hopes that I can get ulted. I was really expecting my cloak and dagger to like ult sooner. Maybe she was using it to counter the thing ult though. So here we're using two ultimates, right? And Ella can basically use her ult and know that there's nothing really going to shut her down other than maybe like a Punisher or Bucky could shoot her out of her ultimate. Um, but she knows that there's no defensive ult to stop her.
Judge, jury, executioner.
The supports right now, I think, are playing in a way where they're specifically using ults to counter the enemy team ults. And once again, like I said, on defense, that technically puts us at an advantage because all we need to do is make sure that the payload doesn't move. And, you know, if we win in the neutral fight, as long as we stay alive, we still have a shot. So now that we've, you know, essentially like taken out a lot of their super offensive ults, like with the Thing and Punisher, now it's just a matter of sort of like cleaning up in overtime because of the fact that we put them at a disadvantage because they need to be on that payload. They need to be standing on this, which means that whoever is standing on it is going to be taking damage for free, and everyone else is going to, you know, preferably not stand on the payload. But that just basically means that someone out there is going to be left out in the open. We could focus them down, and that will force them eventually to trickle in on, right? So this is why like just surviving those ultimates kind of puts us at an advantage. Um, let's see. Let me go ahead. So once we get some ultimates in here again. Okay, here I'm getting close to my ultimate, and my team is getting close to their ultimates because of the fact that we just have a better start than they did, similar to what they did to us on defense. And now I have my ult, and I go out here to make space. Right now, in this situation, I ult, and I know I'm not going to necessarily be able to get kills with this ult. I'm using it to stay alive and create space because now they can't leave me alone, but that allows my team to push the objective for free, right? It keeps me alive and they have to do something about me, right? So because of the fact that I am in their backline, I am ulting, and I am just outputting a bunch of damage, they leave the objective alone, which creates enough space for my team to just cap it for free. No, you know, using my ult in this way, like, sure, you sometimes want to use ults to get kills, but which I used my ult for was to create space so that way I could buy time for that convoy to move for free, right? It's very similar in how, like, if you're playing a domination map, you know, if your team dies and you have control over the objective, I might ult solo on the point in order to just get it from like, you know, 60% to 99% and just buy time until my team can come back and try and retake it. You know, one ult in order to try and get it to basically all the way, you know, to cap is super beneficial, right? So in this instance here, all I was trying to do was buy time so that way that point can cap for free, and all we have to do is worry about, you know, pushing it to the second point. One alt traded for that to cap the objective is massively beneficial. Because we always have to remember the game is about playing around the objective, and getting kills allows you to, you know, to capture the objective, but sometimes you don't need to get kills in order to secure the objective. You can do that with backcapping, you can do that with creating space, you can do that with zoning. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. And this is also why, like, you know, I know sometimes people have had the idea of saying like, oh, why can't it be performance based? Is because of the fact that in games like this, it's not just about kills. It's not just about how much damage you do or how many kills you get or how much healing you do. It's about playing around the objective and playing in a smart way that allows you to win more games because you're focused on what tools you can use to secure that objective. So right here, you know, like what I'm doing is I am just being a massive distraction, which during this time, the entire time that I'm being a distraction, the payload is still moving, right? As long as the payload is moving, then my job is successful. But now once they start to go up to contest the objective, I want to pull them off of it. And here, you know, I help force the Luna ult early. Meg tries to ult and doesn't end up getting Luna, which means that it was beneficial to the Luna, right? Uh, they get to do more with her ultimate than he does with his. Um, Invis Woman and Rocket ult at the same time. Or at this point, I'm just charging my own. I get out of the way of the Jeff
By
ult.
the eye of Agamotto. Judge, jury, executioner.
Now we're entering alt domino territory, right? I ult here because of the fact that uh, I know that they just used every single one of their ults. They have 0 ults in return, which means now that I'm ulting and Hell is ulting, that puts them on the back burner and they have to get out, right? This means the objective is now moving for free because of the fact that they used all of their ults and they didn't get enough value out of them. So now they have to back up. They have to give up space and they have to respect my ult going off and the Hella ult going off.
Sorry, soldier.
And once the objective stops moving, I move back to the objective to make sure it keeps moving. So here, just creating space and and now Star-Lord can ult and ult for free because of the fact that we know that Luna hasn't had enough time to charge her own ultimate up. And they don't have an answer to the Star-Lord ult. Ulting, when you ult in this game is just it's difficult because it's not so black and white. You can't just be like, well, I'm gonna ult and force support ults, or I'm gonna ult and try and I'm gonna ult and try and just create space. Like here, Bucky now decides to ult, and we don't have an ult of our own ready yet. And I don't have mine. So it's like, I ulted earlier before to try and make more space, but would it have been better for me to hold it, preparing for the inevitable Bucky ult? These are things you sort of have to ask yourself when you're playing the game of just like, okay, what can I use my ult for? Can I use it to create space? Can I use it to buy time? Can I use it to counter someone else's ult? Like, how you decide to use it is ultimately like what makes games so fun and so creative, is that, you need to try and figure out when the best time is. Because there has been times where, like with Cloak and Dagger, I use my ult in a way just to create an opening for my ally. It's the same for like Psylocke. If I notice that we have somebody who has a really strong ult on our team, like Star-Lord, I will, as Psylocke, say, I'm going to ult their backline and force their defensive ult early. So Star-Lord gets a free ult off because his has more value than mine does as Psylocke. So, sometimes there's stuff like that that happens in which, um, you know, you uh, you are planning ahead and you are trying to work and strategize with your team, knowing what alts can counter yours and what alts on your team are stronger. Because some people in the game, as we know, just have stronger alts than others. Groot has an incredibly powerful alt at securing kills. App has an incredible alt at buying time. Each alt does something different. And, if you already have control over the objective and you're playing Captain America, for instance, you might be able to alt in, jump on their backline, and force their defensive alts, which would allow then Groot to alt after and secure the kills and keep the objective for longer. So, how you stagger your ultimates and how you choose to use them, um, really is going to be sort of like something you have to figure out in the moment and figure out like what counters your ults and how you can play around it. Because sometimes it's as simple as just trying to do your best to like you know change the timing of your ultimates or force an ult early. But what you really don't want to do is if you see a defensive ult come out, you don't want to like Psylocke ult, for instance, after that. It would just be a giant waste. It wouldn't kill anything, and they would basically end up the victor in that sort of alt exchange. Sometimes holding your alt and timing it for a little bit afterwards will make the world a difference. Um, but here's a good example of just like uh, a game where I'm playing Psylocke. We actually lose this first round, but the start of it went really well.
Proof that one person should
In sort of like how I determined like when I wanted to ult. So here, because of the fact that me and Black Panther have a good dive and I get a good double dash to the team, uh, I get a fat amount of ult charge in the very beginning here. Chasing me. So here, just ult charging. Don't like standing near my team, so I try to flank. Once again, get a good flank. Get out, stay alive. Right now, our team, because of the fact that once again, because of the team that our team was doing better, we have a natural ult advantage going. What I'm trying to do here is charge my ult off of this tank because of the fact that I know that I'm super close to it. Now, I see that I was close to ult, so I was just trying to charge off of the Hulk. And I get myself into position and I ult early. And the reason why I do this is because of the fact that because I know I was doing so much damage, we were securing so many kills early. You can see that they are not at their defensive ults yet. Luna's close and not nearby, and Invisible Woman is still pretty decently away. But because of the fact that I knew with how much damage output I was doing that they probably didn't have their defensive ults ready, I was trying to charge it up as fast as possible and then hit my ult as soon as I could in order to make a play, so that way we could maintain control over the objective for longer. And you see how that gave us a huge advantage, right? This is what I mean by like, sometimes when you're playing, uh you're doing so well so early on. The moment that you get your ult, you just want to use it as quickly as possible because of the fact that now the enemy team doesn't have a way to counter against it. They have nothing prepared, they have nothing planned because you happen to be doing so well at charge so quickly that it just put us in a huge advantage. Um, there's another time later I mess up. Okay, there's another time here later where I mess up, like right here. I have my ult, I'm getting attacked, and I ult and I press my ult in order to stay alive, and I end up getting hit out of the air. This is something I learned in the moment that like I didn't think Hela would be able to hit me that way, and I've now realized that I have to respect it a little bit more. But now I lose my ultimate because of it. We basically lose the round because I screwed up. But sometimes you ult just to stay alive. If I would have been able to get into my ult and go invis, I would have been able to survive long enough in order to try and help my team maintain control over the objective. But I ended up dying with my ult instead. And sometimes you do that. Sometimes you ult just to stay alive because of the fact that if you have control over the objective and you need to maintain control over it, it's better to ult to stay alive and not get a kill than it is to die and lose control over the objective when you really need it, right? Um, so yeah, don't be afraid to throw out your ult out there if it means that you're trying to maintain control over the objective. Um, let's see. We'll go through one more round here as with me on Psylocke, so we can see a little bit more DPS, like when to ult sort of like right now we can tell that they don't have defensive ults, right? Um, we're gonna have a Captain America ult, we're gonna have a Cloak and Dagger ult that sort of puts us in a huge advantage just at the start. We're using ults to try and secure the objective, and now that we have it, it's in our advantage. But you see me have an ult, and I know that they don't have defensive ults from the previous round. So I ult on their backline and on their tanks. And you see how I only got one kill there, right? But what I had done is I split them far away, which left Cloak and Dagger isolated, which made her an easy kill, and everyone else kind of had to dip out. But because of the fact that I ulted and I got one kill, that is, especially on a support, that's worth it. You know, a lot of times people in these games, they think to themselves like, "Oh, I'm not going to ult because there's only one person here." Depending on who that person is, that ult might be entirely worth it. Like you want to ult in order to get kills. If you get one kill and it's a 6v5, your team has a big advantage. If it's 6v4, the fight is practically over. And if it's 6v3, the fight is guaranteed over. But you don't need to have a big playmaking ult in order to secure the objective. You could get just one kill and that would be enough. And as Psylocke, I frequently will solo ult one person if it means I'll secure it, because her ult is so lackluster the higher up that you climb that most of the people just jump right out of it or heal through it. But it's not that great of an ult. So using your ult to secure a single kill uh, is a lot of times worth it if it means controlling the objective. So right here, hopefully during the game, everyone should be trying to keep track of like what ults each team has. And so Hela used her ults to basically force something to happen because when they need to get control of the objective, that's ultimately what you want to do. And she forced the Invis woman ult early. Now during these times, people are countering alt for alt, and with support alts, really what helps a ton is sort of when the enemy team uses their defensive ult. If you can hold your defensive ult for even a second or two until after theirs has already been going on a while, then what's going to happen is if now that their invis woman has cast an ult on point, uh, theirs is going to last longer than ours is, right? Which gives them an advantage in sorts because, like, as soon as a defensive ult like this comes out, basically that team can't die for that certain amount of time. Like, you can, but it's really difficult. So odds are nothing's going to die. So, when you can wait and cast your ult a second or two afterwards, you give your team a bit of an advantage in that it gives them more time in order to try and secure a kill faster. That was lucky, not gonna lie. But now they used both of their defensive ults, hearing Cloak and Dagger use it at the end there. And because I knew that she didn't have her ult because she just used it, I go for a quick assassination attempt, which gives my team an advantage to go in. I see him use his bubble, which was a mistake. I know that he's free. I know that Invis Woman is here, and that means that Cloak and Dagger isn't. And now even though they have control over the objective, both of their supports are dead. They don't really have, we have the numbers advantage here, right? I have my ult. I don't want to use my ult though. I want to save it for the next fight, which I really need it. This fight is done. This fight's secure. All I need to do now is help them clean up the last few people who are here, right? They're going to try and stall out as long as they can. But here now I'm trying to use it to try and stagger them longer, right? Because this is buying us time. I didn't want to just use it when there's two on point when we could possibly clean it up like that. I'm trying to use it now in a way where, okay, I'm continuing the staggering to happen, which is buying us more and more time, because now they're forced into a position where they have to try and do something ballsy, right? We're putting them in a position where they're forced to either TP or forced to rush to the point. I'm not going to ult if I don't think that I need it, but I will ult in order to stay alive or to stagger enemies longer. And whether or not that's the right play or not, you don't always know in the moment. Here I know we have the advantage, so But because we staggered them so well, because I held my ult, because I used it at different times, because my team held their ults, like, you know, you could even see there that we had, we had Cap ult, we had Cloak and Dagger ult, but both of them aren't using their ults right now. Like we don't need to, right? Um, Black Panther really didn't necessarily need to use his ult. I think he did it to try and survive. But it doesn't matter. We still ended up holding the point. I'm sure that actually he probably did it because he knew that Strange would have had TP, so it would have been best to try and keep him alive just in case. But yeah, that's just unfortunate they didn't get it for the next round. But it's okay. We still end up winning. But yeah, you see here how like you know when you alt, is not so black and white. I can't just say like, hey, alt when they don't have defensive ults because sometimes you do want to alt and force that defensive ult early so that way maybe your teammate can alt. Maybe you want to alt in order to just create space. Maybe you want to alt to just zone people off. Like, your alt is a tool, and how you use that tool uh, will help you win games. But you need to think to yourself, like, if I alt this person, will they just be able to get out of the alt? Like Psylocke, I know a lot of the different ways that people can get out of the ults now where Cloak can sort of just like fade out of it. Invis Woman can double jump and go invis, and I won't be able to hit her. Um, or there's defensive ults that they can use. There's a lot of different ways in which people can counter my ult, and I need to plan ahead accordingly to that. I need to take a notice of the team comp and say, okay, uh, if I alt Hella, it's probably pretty good because she'll have a hard time getting out even with the bird. If Invis Woman has her double jump, I probably shouldn't ult her because she's just going to get away. Ulting the tank alone isn't good enough. Namor has his bubble. So if I attack Namor and get him to use his bubble, then perhaps I can ult him. And Cloak, if she still has her fade in cloak mode, then I might not be able to secure the kill on them alone. And Strange, another tank, wouldn't be great to do unless I could hit him solo. Like, how you use your ultimate is going to be entirely dependent on the team comp you're going up against and, whether or not you can do something to counter it beforehand. If I go in and I attack Invisible Woman and I force her to double jump, but I still have eyes on her, I might then be able to ult her and kill her before she can get away, right? Or sometimes I just want to throw out my ult because I know that they only have one defensive ult, and so that way it gives my Groot an opportunity to get kills with his ult instead. Because I think Groot ult is technically better than mine. Uh, so yeah, you know, when you ult, that's really hard to answer. I can't give a straight video on just making it super simple, but I hope that this helped sort of give you some ideas of like strategy and planning ahead because it's not as simple as just like having strong heroes that counter things. I'm sure if some people have saw like using your ult in creative ways, like I use my Psylocke ult sometimes as a defensive ult. I use it specifically on Buckies or Storms who want to ult my backline if I don't have a defensive ult on my team up at that moment. Um, there's ways you can use your ult in order to keep your team alive, maintain control over the objective, buy time. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of different creative ways you can do it. A lot of creative ways you can use it, and you know, wouldn't be able to tell you all the different possible scenarios in which these alts can be used. So you're gonna have to try and figure that out on your own. But ultimately, what you're trying to do is use your alt in a way in which it helps secure and win the fight by giving you that numbers advantage. And once you have that numbers advantage, you don't want to use your ultimates if you don't have to. Uh, there's no point in padding your stats if the fight's already over. There is a point in staggering your enemies, but that's different. Um, so yeah, I hope that this was helpful. I hope that I went over enough. I know that this is a much bigger topic than I can possibly fit into one video. But if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll try to get back to them when I can. But yeah, I know a lot of people have been asking for when to alt video, and I hope this sort of gave you some ideas because it this is when winning games could be as simple as just timing your alts slightly differently. Changing the timing of them to where you're forcing the defensive alts early and then you alt afterwards. Just using it in conjunction with another one of your teammates, like Venom and Rocket is a great combo, right? So Hopefully, this gave you some ideas. And once again, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. And hopefully this was helpful.